Welcome to the Great Beer State podcast from the Michigan Brewers Guild. The Great Beer State is a weekly show sharing conversations and stories from the passionate people who contribute to our vibrant Michigan beer community. It is made up of a mix between full-length archived interviews from the Guild's first documentary book project, A Rising Tide, Stories from the Michigan Brewers Guild, and conversations recorded in the here and now. Each episode is kicked off with a conversational update from host Scott Graham, Executive Director of the Guild, and the beer-evangelist Fred Biltman, author of A Rising Tide. Here's Scott and Fred. Welcome to episode 21 of Michigan's Great Beer State podcast with the Michigan Brewers Guild. My name's Fred. I'm the beer evangelist. I'm here with my good friend Scott Graham, Executive Director of the Michigan Brewers Guild. Scott, welcome to episode 21.
Thanks, Fred. Good to see you again this week, and glad to be doing our 21st episode. It's really going great, I think.
Absolutely. Keeps marching along. Got really engaging content. I love hearing all the different stories from all across the state. We're going to draw from the archives today from our Rising Tide project. The interviews we did for that book project in 2018. This one is another one from the UP Fall Beer Festival where we talked to a lot of people. And we talked to David and Andy, co-founders of Blackrocks Brewery. Right there in Marquette, Michigan. So that'll be a fun interview. And in the meantime, we'd love to get started with updates. You got anything new out there for members, brewery, allied, or enthusiasts?
Well, we've discussed almost every week what the COVID pandemic means to our business. And just recently, we had kind of more exciting news, I guess, or news in that it gets a little bit technical maybe, but the Michigan Supreme Court had a decision in front of them, and they decided that the way that the Michigan governor had been extending emergency orders was unconstitutional and invalid. And under the state of emergency, it allows the executive office of the governor to be able to impose executive orders that say things that need to be taken care of or done or not done. And we've all been living under these restrictions, for the health and safety of everybody. And it's been a confusing and trying time. So basically, it nullified all of that, saying that the process and the law that it was looking at was unconstitutional. And then there were conversations about, well, there's a period of time before it's no longer in effect, or it's in effect immediately. And I think if you talk to legal experts, as is often the case, you can get more than one opinion. So it was confusing. But shortly after that, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services came out and said, hey, we have an emergency order that says you need to behave in this way as far as gatherings, restaurants, and the like, and basically imposed many of the same restrictions that were undone by the Supreme Court decision. And the long and short of all that, I think it left a lot of people uncertain and just added to the existing complications. It's frustrating to be wearing a mask or to deal with somebody who's not and doesn't want to. And I think we saw, some more uptick, I guess, in folks coming in saying, hey, I don't have to wear a mask anymore. And people saying, well, we're trying to run the safest operation we can here at our brewery tasting room, and we require it. And, well, I'm mad at you and have words for you would come up. And so it's been kind of a confusing week, and it's kind of on par. It's not even entirely out of character with where we've been for the last 6 months. So it was noteworthy, but to me, it really doesn't change a whole heck of a lot.
Right. And I think that it did open up an opportunity for more confusion and more conflict, at the front door. I think by and large, I don't know if you've seen any different, but every restaurateur and brewery that I've seen on social media has been restating that they're maintaining their policies for health and safety, and that the rules stay the same, executive order or not. That's by and large what I've seen, and I think it's both respectful and safe to listen to your host setting policy for the safety of their guests and adhere. So that's what I personally encourage, and I hope that everybody in our brewery visiting public can hear and respect and support, regardless of which department's executive order is making the rules. I think we've got to listen to our hosts and be good guests.
I couldn't agree more. And if you really disagree with that or don't want to put up with it, I think the right action is to be respectful and polite and just not go into their space. Come back another time when things are a little more to your liking. But causing a confrontation is just, it's really counterproductive to me. But there's lots of emotion running around out there that's finding its way out in strange and different ways.
Yeah, and I think one of the more interesting wrinkles looking forward will be, I think, some of the head count rules. I think the mask or no mask and indoor social distancing protocols are going to be here for a long time. But how many people are allowed indoors in a certain square footage, that capacity restriction, that's going to be a little more, I think that will leave some room for some interpretation and or change. We'll see how that goes over time, but it's going to become crucial for people to understand how many people they can have indoors as we move into the winter months.
Yep, indeed. So again, everybody be patient, be thoughtful. I don't like wearing a mask much myself, but if it keeps me from spraying spittle or virus or bacteria around, I think it's a pretty easy compromise, and it makes sense to be thoughtful of others.
Right on. So we've also been talking about the winter conference, and that is going to have a change in format, a change in sort of structure. You've got any news you want to share with our members that would normally be attendees or potential attendees for the winter conference?
I think as far as our members who do attend the conference, and for those who don't know what it is kind of an industry thing. It's open to anybody, but it's really the primary time during the year when we get together as a group to learn some things from experts and from each other, and to spend time interacting with each other and networking, as they say. And it does involve a couple of beers, but it's really something that our group looks forward to. I know a lot of people are missing the social aspects of our beer festivals, and to think about not being able to do the conference is a little heartbreaking also. And we're not trying to completely replicate it in a virtual format, which of course you could not do, but we are going to have an effort to share some information and try and take advantage of the opportunity to have virtual presentations and maybe get a broader scope of presenters. Our plan this year was to take our conference, which usually has information focused on beer production as well as the business aspects of running a brewery or brew pub, and adding an element and incorporating what has been the Great Lakes Hop and Barley Conference, so that to include these kind of agricultural pieces with hops, barley, and malt. And this is something that we've worked on historically for I don't know, 7-8 years now with Michigan State University Extension. So it just made a ton of sense to bring the two groups together. There's some things that really make a lot of sense to have together. There's some things that may not be as interesting, but both both of our groups really have a lot of interaction and that can benefit each other. So we are incorporating that. And I think that our members are really going to enjoy the way we're approaching the conference presentation, and it's also going to leave everybody really hoping to have an in-person conference in January 2022.
Yeah, right on. It's exciting. And it's technically 3 groups because we've long since partnered with Master Brewers Association of America District, Michigan. So they've been part of our conference for a long time, and we're adding the Great Lakes Hop and Barley folks as well. So great partnerships there, and I think the creative minds on the committee are coming up with some really great options. So look forward to that. That will be in early January, and that's about what we have to announce so far. But I think, what would you say? We're going to be announcing more format details and speakers maybe by mid-November.
Yeah, yeah, if not a little sooner than that, but certainly by mid-November, early to mid-November.
Great. Well, that seems like a good time to jump into the Brewers Dozen, our weekly shout out to 13 member breweries across the state. Scott, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I will put in a note for those who pay particular attention to details that our Brewers Dozen, much like a baker's dozen, has typically included 13, but then sometimes one company has multiple outlets and there will be more. And I've worked all the way through the brewery checklist I was using, and it required me to list 14. So our Brewers Dozen this week is 14 breweries, starting out in the Metro Detroit area, and specifically Dearborn and Dearborn Brewing Company, which is a fun local tasting room model of a brewery in Dearborn, as noted.
Excellent. Next up from New Hudson, Michigan, we have Draft Horse Brewery.
Yeah, New Hudson is I'm not too familiar with it, but it's near Novi, kind of not too far from the Grand River there, in that area north and west of the city. They boast a menu and a great space and tasting room with lots of beers. Also in the Metro Detroit area is Gravel Capital Brewing Company in Oxford, and Gravel Capital opened, I believe, just before the pandemic shut everything down. So what a tough time to open. But again, they're a microbrewery with a kitchen, and so they've got more of a menu than some places. But Gravel Capital Brewing.
All right. Moving over to Howell, we've got Heartland Brewing Company.
Yeah, Heartland is a relatively new member also. I think they opened later in 2019, joined the guild kind of in this pandemic phase, which is really interesting. Howell is kind of near 23 and 59 in that northwest area outside of Detroit, known for their pizza and beer. Ozone's Brew House in Lansing is they've been open a few years. It's in kind of a repurposed building just north of the downtown area. I think they're sort of in the Old Town district, where in the first days of our winter beer festival, we're right on the street in that Old Town area. But Ozone's Brew House is kind of a father and son team. They've got great beer, and they operate some food out of a food truck on the premises.
All right. And in Big Rapids, we've got Raven Brewing and Barbecue. Big Rapids is also the home of Ferris State University, whose hospitality program has included brew management, and they've put out some really talented brewers, and I've done some guest teaching there for beer and food and beer flavors. So that's a great spot there in Big Rapids, Michigan, Raven Brewing.
Yeah, and they're, of course, a brew pub license, so they've got a full menu, obviously noted for their barbecue, but they serve guest beers and cocktails and a full complement of alcohol products. Back to the outskirts of the Detroit area, we have River's Edge Brewing Company in Milford. Um, they're a microbrewery with a tasting room. They've got a limited food menu there. I know River's Edge does some interesting barrel fermentations or barrel aging, and has quite a variety of different beers.
Yeah, and coming back to my neck of the woods in Allegan, Michigan, we've got Shanedorf Brewing Company, and they are a pub operation, but a pretty significant restaurant operation and space as part of it. A big kitchen, and they are connected to or associated with family farms, so they're bringing a lot of their own meat in. And I don't know all the inner workings, but I have enjoyed a couple of visits there, and it's a pretty robust effort. Good space.
Yeah. Superior Coast Brewery, which is in Sault Ste. Marie, is another, it's a small brewery inside a restaurant called Carl's Cuisine, and they're attached to their family farm. I don't know if they're into meat and things like Shanedorf, but they really try and source locally, have their own farm. It's a family operation, and they have their own beer through their Superior Coast Brewery, and they're situated right by the locks, so you can probably watch a freighter cruise by while you have a beer and something to eat at Superior Coast Brewery in Carl's Cuisine.
There you go. And staying up north along the shores of Lake Superior, we've got the Vierling Restaurant and Marquette Harbor Brewery. We talked to Chumley in an episode a few weeks back, and it's a great shout out considering today's interview with Andy and David from Blackrocks. But Vierling's one of the originals, been around a long time, and be sure to check out Chumley's episode.
Townie's Brewery in Ann Arbor. So obviously the Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti area is home to many breweries, some of the earliest breweries. Townie's is, it's not right downtown, but it's very near downtown. It's a tasting room model brewery, and one of the great stops that you can go to in the Ann Arbor area.
All right, we've got Unity Vibration Kombucha in Ypsilanti.
Yeah, I know I've talked to some people. There's some confusion about kombucha. A few years ago, the state decided that it would be regulated like beer, and it requires a brewer's license. Unity Vibration actually makes a lot of kombucha beer. Most kombucha is pretty low in alcohol, but they make some kombucha beer as well. And they're located just outside of Depot Town in the Ypsilanti area, so very close to our summer beer festival.
So just to clarify what you're saying there, you're saying for a company to be licensed to make kombucha, they are doing so on a brewer's license.
That's correct.
There you go. All right, I think you're up next, taking us to Escanaba.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Upper Hand Brewery in Escanaba. So this is a separate brewery from Bell's. Upper Hand is it's a really cool place. They've got a tasting room. They are not in the downtown area. They're out in sort of an industrial park area, but you can go there and try their beers. Their beers are all distinctly their own Upper Hand beers. And they just recently announced that they were going to be distributing their beer below the bridge for the first time since they opened several years ago.
Exciting. And last up, we've got Warwater Brewery in St. Clair.
Yeah, so St. Clair is kind of north of the downtown Detroit area, but in that same metro area. And I have not been to Warwater yet, but they've got a great looking menu, and they've got their tasting room, and it looks like a really cool project I look forward to getting to. And I know that they're distributing their beer in kegs and cans. So you might find it at a store near you.
Right on. So if you were wondering how many weeks would it take you to list and shout out to all of our member breweries, if you did roughly 13 a week, not counting some duplicate locations, it takes you 21 weeks. So we've made it through the member roles, and we're going to regroup and keep doing shout outs. And I think you've mentioned we're going to, your idea is to tailor it regionally and do kind of some weekly beer trails as an alternative to go around for round two.
Yeah, we certainly want to be highlighting the entire industry in every brewery, and it's going to take a long time to do that in a episode by episode format. So our effort has been to at least give mentions and thought to all our member breweries. And now that we've cycled through, we do want to continue it. So whether it's a regional grouping or some other logical way to group breweries together, we're gonna keep talking about, doing our best to keep talking about all of our members.
Excellent. So, great time to jump into introducing our guests. We had a joint interview here with both David and Andy, co-founders of Blackrocks Brewery. We sat on their patio the day before the 2018 UP Fall Beer Festival, and really enjoyed this conversation. They both have a lot of enthusiasm and creativity, and I especially loved hearing this kind of with the Chumley interview as a component, because they refer back to both of their experiences with one another, Chumley being on the early edge, and then these guys opening a brewery as the scene sort of existed, but they both referred back to that first fall beer fest in the UP and its impact on the scene up there, and I just really enjoyed hearing that those perspectives. What was it like for you?
I really enjoyed listening to it, and I remember talking to Chumley. I first learned of those guys working on their brewery because Chumley would call me and talk to me about it and tell me what they were doing, and he was trying to help them. And their original brewery is in a house on 3rd Street in Marquette, in a house, and Chumley's exclaiming, "It's in a house," and I don't know how they're ever going to make enough beer. He was, he would kind of vent on me about, I'm not sure what they're doing, but I'm trying to help them along up there. And indeed, they opened up and would sell all their beer in 2 or 3 days and then not be able to be open or limited open, and they'd brew and then get back open again. And so it really has been quite a thing. But their pub on 3rd Street is a really cool place to go and drink beer. They added a second facility, which is actually an old beer distributor warehouse, which is a production facility for them. And they've just done a great job of making fun brands and really good brands of beer. And they've learned a lot and approached the business in a way that has just allowed them to build Blackrocks into something that's really a great brewery. It's a terrific story, and it's fun to hear from David and Andy how they got started in the first place.
Yeah, it's really overgrown homebrewing operation, which is a classic in the micro craft brewing, history books. There's a lot of those, and this is just one of those genuine. They were homebrewing at production levels and then producing with a homebrew approach, and then grew up from there. So when you were telling the story about the advice and the sort of the concern, I was just thinking, turns out they were both right. Like, Chumley was right that they were going to run into troubles, and they were right that they were going to figure it out. And so it's just a fun story to hear from, and they got a great attitude about it. And they really talked about they were such a great conversation towards some of that original purpose that we wanted to express, is how do we keep, what's the importance of community and how do we keep moving it forward? And I think they lent a lot of interesting thoughts and energy to that, and it's clearly something that they focus on as part of their business.
Yeah, and they've been close to the Brewers Guild and supportive, and I've always felt like they have always been a really engaged and important part of what we're doing.
Yeah, so we'll hand it off to David and Andy sitting on the patio of Blackrocks Brewery in 2018. Here's David and Andy.
Cheers.
Cheers. Well, hi, guys.
Hey, how are you?
Great. I would love to talk about Blackrocks, about Michigan beer, Michigan brewing community. Maybe we can start. Just tell me a little bit about yourselves, who you are, and how you guys came to be Blackrocks Brewery.
Well, I guess I'll start. I'm David Manson. I'm a native Marquettean. Moved away, went to school, lived in Chicago, came back and worked corporate, and then met Andy through our mutual corporate jobs, and we were pretty bored, so we started a brewery, and here we are.
Yeah, what year was that?
2010.
2010.
We'd been home brewing prior to that for about 4 years, and just kind of was given an opportunity, I'd say, in life to reboot, and so we took it, and here we are.
My name's Andy Langlois.
Yeah.
Originally from Kingsford, Michigan. Came up to Marquette for college, NMU. And I believe David covered the rest of that going into where we are now.
So can you remember kind of what spurned on that first idea of let's start a brewery? Like what sort of gave you the inkling or the belief that it was an idea beyond, wistfully dreaming?
I think, we often reflect on that, and I think a lot of it was you sit around when you're home brewing and you've got that hour boil and you just start talking and, maybe dreaming, or wouldn't it be great if, and so I think ultimately our plan was we were going to get the golden watch on retirement and then maybe give a go and give it a shot when we had time, and so I think it was always just kind of in the back of your mind, like, it'd be cool to make this legit. Like,
sure, it's fun to make beer for yourselves and your buddies in the basement or in the garage, but man, how neat would it be to share it with everybody?
Yeah. How industrious were you guys as homebrewers? Like, how often were you brewing? What was your system like?
I'd say we were pretty industrious.
Yeah.
So it was kind of growing that way, even from a physical manifestation.
Mm-hmm.
It was, we started, and so I had brewed back in the 90s doing, Mutton's canned boils and blowing up bottles in my basement, and just life got in the way and couldn't continue. And so when we were looking for something, I said, well, I'd really like to do it all grain and have that flexibility and learn the nuances of the hops and the grain and all the different, water chemistries and have you. And so, it was really kind of like every weekend we could. I think we even modified. We used to just brew in the backyard on sunny, nice days on the weekends, and then winter up here came, and so I added an outlet, and we started doing it inside and scare the kids out of the basement because they didn't like the smell. But I mean, it felt like every weekend, but it probably wasn't.
Yeah, it was quite a bit. We were brewing pretty much all the time.
And it was 5 gallons.
When we weren't working.
And they were like, no, this isn't enough. Let's get more. And then we went to 10 gallons and kind of rested with that for a while, and had put a little tap room in our basement just to kind of have a little cooler to pour kegs of beer. And
we were brewing all grain, and we finally graduated to the Blickman, nice stainless homebrew setup, and that
for our original go, really.
Yeah, but we even had a 15-gallon over at your place.
Yeah. And
then so that was pretty Gucci at the time, and
the seeds were planted.
Yeah, mm-hmm. It was nice too, because if you're in the Michigan brewing community, you've heard of Chumley, and Chumley was he was a good sounding board for us as far as getting us in the right direction. And we go visit him down at the Veerling and tell him what we were planning and buying, and he'd say, you guys bought too much specialty grain, that's going to last you for years, in the classic Chumley fashion. And but it was nice having him involved a little bit too, and pointing us in the right direction.
The cool thing was that we kind of started to realize early on that it is a brethren of people, or women as well. I mean, it's a family of people that want to help people make good beer, Nobody wants to help somebody make bad beer.
Yeah.
And that's really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
We all hang on each other in some respect and open to anything. Yeah. I know we when we were first looking into going legit, it was, who could we reach out to? That's, when we called people and they were responsive and forthcoming with information, and there was no like, well, I don't want you to start a brewery. It was like, yeah, go for it. It's, here's what you can expect, and this is what we saw. And so that was really kind of neat that, there was this camaraderie. Did
your view of the beer scene here in Marquette, like, I'm curious about how it looked when you came, or you were already here, but what, in the school years and kind of when you were just a consumer with an interest in becoming a home brewer, somewhere along those lines, and how has your view of the beer community in this area changed as you morphed into professionals and members of the community?
Well, it's interesting because I think some of our views were shaped by the first Michigan Brewers Guild event that was held in Marquette down in Lower Harbor. I think there were only like 300 or 400 people at the time.
That was 08, I think. This is 10.
It would have been 08, yeah.
Yep, and now it's 4,000. But at the time, that seemed like a lot. And when we were down there, we enjoyed it probably too much.
Yeah, we had intentions of being a research trip.
Yeah, research. Let's go to well, we researched it. Let's say
researched just very few notes.
Yeah. It's a small town, but it was tough getting home. So I guess at that point, the light bulb also goes off and says, there's some support here, because even though there was only 300 or 400 people, to us it seemed like a lot. You go to a Brewers Guild event and it's just it blows your mind. It's unlike most other beer festivals out there. So we mentioned Chumley earlier, but that was primarily in Marquette. That was the only brewery in town, and he seemed to be doing really well. And it just seemed like Marquette was a really good town, ready for some more craft beer.
Yeah, I think I think this was predominantly a light American lager town. I think the UP in general, you could have said that. And I think we've really, as an area, we've expanded our palates. And I think, that's just kind of part and parcel with that growth of craft beer.
Yeah.
In the whole state,
And how has the UP or Marquette specifically, how has that community morphed and grown into having multiple breweries versus one brewery for a very long time, at least in Marquette?
Yeah.
A handful in the UP. Now there's a lot more players. What's that community look like, and how has it grown?
I think it's, as mentioned, I think obviously within our own internal, it's very supportive, very helpful. If anybody needs anything, we all help each other out. I think as a consumer base, I think they're very savvy. They are so much more aware of good and bad product and what's available. One of the funny stories we like to share is...
You're talking about consumers overall?
Consumers in the UP, I think.
Yeah, so their awareness has grown,
their
and so has their...
definitely grown, and so has their palates, and so has their expectations.
Yeah.
Right? The great story that I share all the time, and we had a tasting at Meyer yesterday, and I was telling the same story about, I got dragged in here with my husband. I don't like beer. Well, their experience with beer was, a mass-produced light American lager, and yeah, maybe that's not the best for you. Right? And so we're like, well,
reasonably unimpressed.
They would be open to trying something, and you eventually get something where they're like, oh, wow, I didn't know beer could taste like that.
Yeah, I love that.
And then to see them now, 7 to 8 years later, and they're like, hey, so you've got this chili brown on right now? Like, I really want to try that. So their palates grow if they become open to it, and they realize that it's not the mass-produced pablum that's normally been out there that they've been exposed to. And it's just fun to see that progression in an individual. And we see it on, maybe not as much anymore, but certainly when we first opened, it was I don't drink beer. I'm just here because, I got dragged along.
Yeah.
And now they're, I need a double IPA. What do you got?
Yeah. Do you think it helps that the community is more diverse in terms of brewery and brewery offerings, so that people are, if they're experiencing going out in Marquette, they can end up going to several breweries and getting a wider perspective? Do you think that's helpful to the overall health of the market, and is that developing a different type of drinker?
I think it is. I think that you can say that because we're not Grand Rapids where you could go to so many. It's more they'll go to different locales and experience their stuff, each individual place, and that gives them that awareness of what is out there and how things can be different from brewery to brewery to brewery.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's great.
Yeah, I think it's an experience too that when you come into a place, everybody's going to have maybe a little different vibe, similar but different vibe, different surroundings. Maybe some different regulars that are here. Some locals that maybe are steady at our place aren't the same ones that are steady over at the Oradoc or Cognition. So it can become very social, and it definitely opens up some avenues to meet new people that you normally wouldn't have met. And I think breweries in general do that. I think it's just different because you can come to a brewery and where maybe you didn't go to your local bar. You'd say, I'm not at this point in my life where I want to go to this local bar and hang out, and for whatever reason. But breweries have a lot of extra things attached to them, that kind of sprawl out to the community. Whether you're in the mountain bike scene, you're in the music scene, you're in the art scene. We had Shakespeare here the other night, and they were doing, well, actually not William Shakespeare, but the Shakespeare Company was here, and that brings in a whole new element too. And I think it's great that breweries in general are open to these different groups, and I don't know, it just kind of helps shape a different experience for the customers, and they're going to get that different experience too, whether they go to our place or
KBC or anywhere in the UP or anywhere in Michigan or anywhere in the country for that matter.
And you guys are a microbrewery by license, so that you have a tasting room, but your beer is also in the marketplace and regular bars, restaurants, and stores, but also in other cities.
Yeah.
Can you tell me kind of how that, I don't know, what that relationship looks like, or what are the advantages of having a tasting room, and what are the advantages of having your beer leave your building? What's that been like for you as a brand and as people?
So I think for us as a brand, being that this is our first girlfriend, and this is where essentially for us it all happened and it started. The
building here,
right here where we're at.
Yeah.
Yep. I think it becomes an experience that if you had a good experience, and we hope obviously everybody does, that when you go home, you kind of hope to get that experience in a packaged good. So for us, it was a real kind of twofold experience to taking that experience with you later. We want people to have a really good time when they're here. We want them to meet our locals. We want them to ask questions about our community and our town and what they can do. And so if they go through that as a good experience, and mind you, we weren't able to do it until 3 or 4 years after we opened, then we're able to get the packaged product to their community, and they're able to go, I remember when I was up there and I had 51K on draft, and maybe they liked it, and now they can share it with somebody else. Or if it's on draft at their local watering hole, they'll be like, Grand Rapids, I can have it in my town. That's really neat. So it's really cool to be able to transcend your place, your establishment, and allow people to remember or have that experience wherever they are. And that to me is really cool.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a better way of getting a bead on the pulse of a brewery than going to the mothership. And the pub is the mothership.
A tiny mothership, but our mothership.
Yeah, absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense. So tell me a little bit about how, what you feel is important about having a guild and specifically our Michigan Brewers Guild. I'd love to kind of hear it in maybe two gears, if if you can think about it that way, in terms of what was it like for you as an opening brewery. You've already mentioned that it was part of your the formation of the idea, but as an opening brewery, what was important about having the Michigan Brewers Guild in place, and then how has that changed, and what do you feel is important now as a 8-year brewery? If you can kind of weigh on what's important about it and why.
I kind of feel like, to me, the Guild is kind of like a big brother out there, or sister, and being able to call up Scott Graham or Brigham or anybody else that's involved with some questions, whether it's regarding government regulations or just growth in general, or hey, can you point me in the direction of we're having trouble acquiring hops? Can you give me a few? Well, here's some sources for you. And I just feel like the Guild is out there and they have our back.
I guess I kind of look at it as it's a bit of glue too. We're all independent, but yet we have this Guild and we have this association that, we can all kind of say, all right, we're in this together.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I mean, it's a crowded marketplace and it's a busy marketplace, but yet we're not stepping over each other to get to the next shelf, right? Mm-hmm. We're all just like, here's what we're going to try to do, and let's try to do it respectfully. And that glue of like, well, we're all, we're in the Guild together. We're all members of the same organization. There's a certain kind of continuation of that ability to connect and say, hey, hey, Joe, I have a question about supplier X. Yeah. Oh yeah, I had a really good relationship with them. They're really good. Talk to Bob. He's going to help you out. And I think if we were all kind of working in our own microcosm, I don't know if that would necessarily happen as much. Yeah. There's almost an accountability to say, here we all are working for the same common goal.
Yeah. And has that changed over time? And does it, maybe another way of asking that is, has it affected how you look at somebody who might come up and tell you, hey man, I'm thinking about opening a brewery, or somebody who's about to open? Does your view on a young yearling brewery, is that affected by how you were treated as an opening brewery from the community?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we didn't have the ability or the feedback or the openness of some other brewery that we reached out to, we are just as owed and owing to somebody else if they have questions or if they have any, first thing is get in touch with the Guild, talk to them about things that are important that you need to do. We'll tell you what our experience was, but it may be different for you in, Warren, Michigan, but being in the Guild and talking with the people involved, you might have a better opportunity to meet somebody who's had a similar situation.
Yeah. Andy, do you have words of advice?
I think anybody who's opening a brewery, you're gonna have to go to the city, state, fed, and or you may go to just random people that you're looking for information. And what we heard a lot of time was, well, good luck, but it wasn't really a authentic good luck. It was more of a good luck.
Yeah.
And I think if you look towards the Guild, it's not that. They're going to say, okay, you can do this, but what you're going to need to do is X, Y, and Z, and we can help you get there. And
obviously, as a business grows and changes, your requests and questions change. We're still searching and still asking those questions, and eventually, they're going to change from, well, here are your first priorities.
Yeah.
And then as you get older, you're like, oh, okay, well, now I have a bigger question about some legislative issues. Hey, Scott, how is this going to affect me? And what should we be doing as an independent, business in relation to our representatives to try to make sure that doesn't negatively impact us? Or
do you find that to be important, that the brewers have, do you feel the brewers have a unified voice through the Guild to stand up for legislative issues, and do we have it, and is it important?
I think we do have it. I think it is vitally important. Admittedly, I haven't made it to the legislative day. It's a long haul down to Lansing for a day.
Yeah.
But I guess I feel, without knowing for sure, that they know what we need as an industry, and they know what will impact us negatively or positively, and they try to make sure that is aware that, hey, there's a group of people, us, please, vote accordingly.
Yeah. Is there anything you hope consumers take away from, what would you hope that would be how they would describe the Michigan brewing community or the guild, either specifically or generally? Like, what do you hope are the hallmarks of the Michigan brewing community?
Well, I think, I did have somebody, and they've recently opened a brewery, and I hated to be a little gruff with it, but, my first thing was, don't suck. Because if somebody's first Michigan craft beer experience is a beer that you're not feeling is up to snuff, then that's a poor reflection on the entire industry.
Yep.
You're like, I had a craft beer in Michigan. It wasn't that good.
Yeah.
And so I think it's vitally important that we all maintain a certain level of standard. I think Michigan has a phenomenal reputation to date for being quality craft beer. I mean, you've got Bells and Founders as some of the big boys who are leading the charge and doing really well, across the nation. But then I think there's a lot of great breweries in the state of Michigan that people cherish and are proud of. And we're proud of somebody who does really well, because we want to make sure that they know Michigan's making great beer.
Yeah.
I forgot the question.
Kind of, what do you hope are the hallmarks that people take away or that consumers would use to describe Michigan brewing as a community?
Well, I think, adjectives, I guess, quality. Maybe they see us as a united front. We take pride in the beer that our state puts out. I'm sure every state says that.
Every state says it, but I wouldn't necessarily say every state executes on that.
I think if you come to one of the fests, you're going to realize that the fun is important and the unity is important. You're going to experience breweries talking to each other. It's not cutthroat, and that's a hard thing to maintain in a more competitive market that you see now than 4 years ago.
And outside of kind of the characteristics of the brewing community, which we've been focusing on, what do you think having a healthy craft brewing industry or community does for the overall community? Like, how do you feel our industry contributes?
I think it's probably, we probably could do a better job of promoting what we do as a collective whole. I mean, obviously we pay taxes, fine, but in our case, we're super advocates of trail networks, and so we contribute to trail networks. We're really big on trying to use local artists and pay them for their services. And I think, I think if you have a proper focus of what your influence as a corporate, we're corporations essentially, right? And so what is your impact on a community? Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to be the ones that just want to pump out the beer and not worry about, cleanliness or good looks or, a building that isn't a dilapidated, So I think they add a lot in regards to the vibe of a city. I mean, everybody wants to come to X town if they have a brewery, but if the brewery is not only supported by the community but also giving to the community, there's a disconnect.
Yeah.
And it's visible. I think it's palpable. I think we all up here, at least I can speak to, we all try to give back in some way, whatever that may be. And I think that's vital. I think it should be endemic of our industry that says, look, we're not just looking to make money and stock it away. We'd like to, but at the same token, that's one of the goals. But it seems like it's combined with some
other overall community values.
I mean, and
it's part and parcel.
Breweries hire people. breweries add back to the communities. You know, they have people who are going to go and be able to work at your establishments, and they're going to be able to then go out and buy coffee and food and, be a contributor to the cyclone of money that has to keep a community alive. And I know that there's other communities that think it's not as vital to their breadth of offerings, but I think it's paramount. I really do. If it's done well.
What are you looking forward? What do you think's important to maintain a healthy community? Whether it's brewery community or your own local community, really is either or. I think I'm leaning towards brewery, but what do you think is important for us to continue to have a healthy industry and healthy community?
Wow, that's a pretty big
question.
That's a good question. Yeah.
I think that involvement in wherever you're located is vital. I really do. In one way, shape, or form. Find your niche passion side project that you can use the brewery to then help. Like I said, for us, it's trails. Mm-hmm. We use them, we abuse them, so we want to make sure that they're selfishly readily available for us, but also for anybody that comes to our community. They get to experience what we love and what we enjoy. Maybe for some people it's art. Maybe it's the homeless shelter. Whatever it is, I think it's vital for people to find something, and that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that person that David mentioned earlier who came in who was a light American lager drinker their whole lives, and that they're still out there. And these people are sometimes are leery to go into a brewery and experiment with new beers that they don't already like beer. So why would I like this? And it's good to kind of nurture that, because they can become that next person who meets someone else and meets this group and becomes involved with this, and also gets involved with the peripheral things involved with the brewing community. And, it opens a lot of doors for them and also for us.
Awesome. Well, I'm good unless you guys have anything else you want to sprinkle on top, but I appreciate the conversation.
I'm just trying to form full sentences I had much sleep the last 4 nights.
You did very well. Lots of full sentences. No, I think it's good. It's good insights, man. I really applaud what you guys are doing as well.
Thanks, man.
We don't know what we're doing.
Well, that's what makes it beautiful. If we knew the whole story of anything, brand or otherwise, we'd all lose interest.
I got nervous when you said looking into the future. We're always like, oh, the future. I don't know what the future.
Yeah. It's exciting.
It is.
And terrifying.
Yes. But it's fun.
Thanks for listening and sharing while supporting Michigan breweries and craft beer everywhere. The Michigan Brewers Guild was formed in 1997 with its first summer beer festival taking place in July of 1998. Its now 5 annual festivals are dedicated exclusively to Michigan beer brewed by more than 270 member breweries. The Michigan Brewers Guild exists to promote and protect the passionate Michigan beer industry in every way possible. To learn more, visit us at mibeer.com. or say hello on one of our social media pages, as we love hearing from you. From coast to coast, from far and near, let's drink Michigan beer.